Bayern Munich are Bundesliga champions. Again, for the 35th time with 4 match days to spare. I'd feign surprise, but you would hear it in my voice and think less of me, so let's just acknowledge this happened and move on. Last week on the show, right, I told you Vince and company had quietly built the best coach team in Europe and that his Bayern was going to hold up when the results got hard. And well, the results did not get hard. They beat Stuttgart 4-2 on Sunday. Dortmund dropped points in Hoffenheim, and the mathematics crossed the line around the 68th minute or so. 15 points clear with 12 left to play for title done. I'd like to say I called it, but saying the best team in the league will win the league is not a prediction, it's a weather report. So let's move on from that. Congratulations, Bayern. Meanwhile, a story down a little bit from the top of the table. The team I kind of want to talk about, and you're gonna unsubscribe when I mention name, is RB Leipzig. Third place, 59 points, beat Frankfurt 3-1 on the road this weekend. Quietly doing everything right. And half of Germany, 3/4 of Germany still wants them to fall into a sinkhole. So we're gonna talk about why, and why as a coach you eventually have to separate what you hate about a club from what the club is actually doing well. Also this week, Union Berlin hired Marie-Louise Eta, the first woman ever to head coach a men's team in any of Europe's top 5 leagues. You heard about that. Her first match this Saturday, they lost, and the way the result is going to get reported is already going wrong. Plus, outside of football, we have Rodtang and One Championship, who finally settled their lawsuits on Sunday. Lots of damages, lots of legal proceedings, everything withdrawn. We'll look at who actually won. And at the end, WrestleMania 42 just wrapped seconds ago. I watched it. I have feelings specifically about the new John Cena. And well, a few things that happened and what that all tells you about everything, how professional wrestling actually works. I'm Sasha, 20 years coaching team sport. This is Tactic, the show where we watch sport the way a coach watches it. Let's go. Bayern Munich 4, Stuttgart 2. Title sealed, with 4 games to spare. Bayern 35th Bundesliga title. There's a non-trivial number of Bundesliga clubs who haven't existed for 35 years, right? The Rekordmeister, as we mentioned last week, is a Rekordmeister for a reason. And Vincent Kompany becomes the first Belgian coach to win a Bundesliga title, which is a fun footnote and also roughly the 900th fun footnote in a Bayern's trophy cabinet. Next week, Mainz away. Wednesday, PSG in Paris for the Champions League semi-final first leg. The titles are side dish now all focus on the Cup and the Champions League. Bayer Leverkusen 1, Augsburg 2. Leverkusen lost at home to the 9th place team. That's the overview. But before the talk radio hot takes land, they were a much better team. Okay, much better, so much better, significantly better. And they lost to a late penalty that, yes, sure, but also doesn't have to. But the story really is just that Leverkusen A could just not get the ball over the line, and that B, Finn Dahmen, goalie from Augsburg, had like one of the games of his life. He saved everything. That was a spectacular performance by Finn Dahmen. So it's not that, Leverkusen so bad, terrible, they lost to Augsburg. It's Finn Dahmen had the game of his life, one of those, and Leverkusen just could not get the ball over the line. Hoffenheim 2, Dortmund 1. Similarly interesting, but so that basically killed Dortmund's title hopes if there were any still alive, but now they're also mathematically finished. 15 points of Bayern, 4 games left. In Dortmund's season was effectively a second place lap around a track Bayern was already done running on, right? Next season, what's going to happen? I don't know, they fire a manager, buy 3 wingers who are way too similar to the wingers they already have, and reassure everyone that's the project that they want to move forward with. Yeah, come back in 2031 or whatever when it isn't. It's the same thing with Dortmund, right? I mean, they would have had a great season, and they had a great season if it wasn't for Bayern, but they're never satisfied and they're never gonna make any structural changes. So I'm expecting the exact same thing next year, to be honest. Um, we had Eintracht Frankfurt 1, RB Leipzig 3, Leipzig third straight win. They're third. This is the match I want to talk about in detail in a minute. So I'll leave it here for this right now. We had Union Berlin 1, Wolfsburg 2. Wolfsburg came in 17th place. Union now lost at home, but more importantly, this was Marie-Louise Eta's first match as head coach of Union Berlin. First woman ever to head coach a top 5 league men's team in Europe. We're also coming back to this after the Leipzig segment because it matters more than what happened in 90 minutes on Saturday. We had Werder Bremen 3, Hamburg 1, the Nord Derby, how we call it in Germany. Bremen fans enjoyed themselves. HSV is 14th in their first season back. Classic, Nord Derby classic. Both of them are now battling against relegation. Fair enough, I think. The game, I think Hamburg was actually level, maybe even slightly better than Bremen at times. But Bremen just clinical and Jens Day just with fantastic goals, so can't complain here. Mainz Gladbach 1-1, St. Pauli Köln 1-1 as well, draws. Neither moved much, to be honest. All of them, I mean, Mainz has been playing better as of late, but they all basically surviving one more week in the survival fight if you look at it. Freiburg 2, Heidenheim 1, Heidenheim still 18, still on 19 points, still not mathematically down, but approaching it with real momentum. Unfortunately, after last week's sign of life, I think this week's 3-1 for Leipzig was the only match where a top 4 team got actually tested and answered the test convincingly, and which is why we're spending the coach's eye segment on Leipzig for a little bit. Because there's a version of the show where we spend, the next 10 minutes hating on RB Leipzig. And I understand why that version would be popular. But I don't think it'd be useful. And the test of whether a show is any good is whether it tells you something you can't get from the hot take version of the same topic. So let's try. So the coach's eye, the Leipzig paradox. First, I want to talk about what Leipzig actually did this season. A quick setup for anyone who hasn't been paying attention. Last season, Leipzig had a badish year. Marco Rose, the previous coach, had a good coach by the way, one of the few managers who fit Red Bull's philosophy because he'd come up through Salzburg, got fired mid-season. Leipzig finished outside the European places for the first time since they got promoted to the Bundesliga. And so for a club whose whole identity is, we're efficient, we develop players, we qualify for Europe every year, that was a hard hit. So they fired the coach mid-season, then had to hire in the summer, and the way they did it is the thing I want to talk about. They went after Ole Werner, who was at Werder Bremen. Werner's young-ish, late 30s, I believe, at the time. Tactically disciplined, good pressing coach, very structured. He had 1 year left on his contract in Bremen, and Bremen didn't want to let him go. So Leipzig paid a transfer fee for a coach, which, if you're not a football person, is a thing that happens and is always slightly awkward. They negotiated for weeks. It got ugly-ish in the Bundesliga gossip columns. Leipzig eventually got the man. And then, and this is part I want you to notice, they gave Werner a clear brief, like rebuild with youth, play fast, get back into Europe, which was not his MO at Bremen. And they did back him with like transfer spending. They sold Benjamin Sesko to Man United. They bought a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds. They have Diomand from, I think, Legan. They had Banzuzi from Belgium and Maximovic from Red Star, for example. Fast forward, 8 months, Leipzig are third. They've just won 3 in a row after getting beat down in the opening game of the Bundesliga this season, by the way. And everybody was like, oh my God, it's going to be a tough year for Leipzig. So they just beat Frankfurt on the road this weekend, 3-1. Werner kind of has stabilized the project. The kids are all right. The kids are getting minutes. They're playing structured vertical football, which is exactly the Red Bull playbook. And they're back in Europe next season, probably Champions League if they hold their place. So it's a good sporting operation, right? It's genuinely a good way to run a football club. So now the question is, why half of Germany will never admit this? Because yeah, I said so many nice things, and yet every Leipzig home game you still hear the whistles. Away fans boycott them. The Wir hassen RB chants are Bundesliga stable. For a lot of Germans, Leipzig's not just a football club, it's a corporate product pretending to be one. And the thing is, they're not wrong. Leipzig was founded in 2009. They bought themselves into the fifth division and paid their way up. The club's members in a those 50+1 structure that's supposed to protect German football from exactly this are Red Bull employees. So the whole entity exists to dodge a rule that every other German club has to live by. You can call that clever. You can also call it what it is, which is the corporate workaround of a system designed to prevent corporate workarounds. So if you're a Bundesliga fan, you have a legitimate structural complaint about Leipzig. It's not a club in the sense that Dortmund or Bremen or even Hoffenheim, which everyone also hates for the same reasons but with less successful football up until now, is a club. So fine, I hear the argument. I even agree with a lot of it. But then as a coach, I have to ask a different question. Not should this club exist in this form? That's a politics question, and I'm not a politician. The question I have to ask is, given that they exist, are they run well? And here the answer is yes. Clearly, yes. So, yeah, what Leipzig tells about other clubs might get a bit uncomfortable, but Leipzig is run better than most of the clubs that spend every weekend hating on them. When Rose started failing last season, they made a decision. They didn't wait 6 months to see if he turned it around. They didn't hire his buddy from the last club. They identified a coach who fit their philosophy, paid a transfer fee to get him, gave him a clear brief, backed him with money, and trusted a rebuild. Compared it to pick a club, Bayer Leverkusen. After Alonso left, they replaced him with, remember, Eric Ten Hag. Ten Hag went badly, real badly. They had to pivot again. Yeah? And right now, Leverkusen actually got their repair process in hand. Good on Kasper Hjulmand. But they've lost like a year or whatever in the process. They didn't need to lose that. Last week, I talked about Real Madrid. President goes to the dressing room instead of letting the manager manage. Man United, to be fair, they turn it around as well, but a club that makes Leipzig look like a model of stability until recently, right? They have Šeško, the striker Leipzig sold them for whatever, 75, 76 million, scoring goals for that team, which is great, but it's structurally closer to collapse than contention. And I know right now they turn it around a little bit, but you've seen the season of Man United, right? Leipzig sold that player, by the way, that is scoring for Man United. And Leipzig identified him when he was at Salzburg. Developed him 2 years, sold him at a peak value, and reinvested into 3 other new signings. That's exactly what a well-run football club is supposed to do. Yeah, the reason United and other teams buying from Leipzig is because they have the cash and the brand. And the reason Leipzig could sell him is because their scouting development is just genuinely good. It's maybe not as great as it used to be and other teams caught up, but it's still very good. As a coach, as someone who spent 20 years trying to get young players to develop, it's the hardest thing in team sport. Developing a player from 17 to 21 while competing at the highest level is incredibly difficult. Leipzig, other teams too, but right now we're talking Leipzig, does it on repeat. They did it with so many examples. Guardiola, for example, Soboslai, Olmo, Šeško, you name it. And now they're doing it with a new roster of 18 and 19-year-old. In about a few years, you're going to see them all over the place, all over Europe. So you can't hate the brand. The football operation is world class. Oh, one more thing, because it's the other side of the same coin though. Leipzig develops everyone, and then Leipzig loses everyone. Their players, coaches, sporting directors, Nagelsmann came up to Leipzig, left for Bayern, then Germany. Rangnick was there. He was around before, but he was there, left. Marsch, Tedesco, Rose, all of them have gone on to other jobs, good and bad. So every great Leipzig player has been sold. Every promising Leipzig coach has been hired away, which is a structural feature, not a bug. And Leipzig's a development club at the very elite level. Their entire business model assumes they can't keep the best people because the best people always have somewhere bigger to go. So they optimize for the development rather than the retention. The problem, and this is where the Leipzig ceiling lives from my point of view, is that develop and sell capsule trophy case. You're never going to win the Champions League with Leipzig because the time your squad is good enough, half of them have been sold. So you're a finishing school for other people's success, which is a frustrating place to be, but also genuinely an admirable place to be. A lot of clubs fail at being a development club and a trophy club. Leipzig has at least picked a lane and is extremely good at the lane they picked. Now, what this means, the next time you hear someone say Leipzig's ruining German football, take a second before you agree. You can say Leipzig shouldn't exist in this form. That's a structural argument about 50+1 and whether the rule still does what it's supposed to. That's a real argument, and I'm sympathetic to it. You cannot separately say that Leipzig's football operation is bad. It's not. It's one of the best run football operations in Germany. And the weekend now, they beat Frankfurt 3-1 with 4 teenagers in the matchday squad with a coach they paid a transfer fee for, playing structured vertical football at a scale that every other RB affiliate also plays, by the way. That's a well-built thing. As a coach, and again, only from a coach's point of view, you have to notice it, even if you wish the club itself did not exist. Now, let me stay in German football for one more thing, because it happened this week and I don't want the Leipzig tangent to bury it, okay? Union Berlin sacked Steffen Baumgart on April 11th, I believe, and they replaced him with Marie-Louise Eta. I think she was 34, if I believe, doesn't really matter. Won the Champions League as a player with a Potsdam, I believe, and has been inside the Union system since 2023. And she was the first female assistant coach in Bundesliga history, and most recently coached Union's under-19s. And she's already scheduled to take over Union's women's first team this summer. And now, as of last week, she's the first woman ever to head coach a men's team in any of Europe's top 5 leagues, not just in Germany, in the Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, Ligue 1, Bundesliga. No woman has ever done this job before. She's the first. Great. This weekend, her first match in charge of Union played Wolfsburg at home. Wolfsburg came into the match into 17th place, and Union lost 1-2. And I want to talk about what the result means, because the reporting on it is already going sideways. Here's the thing. Every new manager loses games. Every interim coach brought in during a crisis loses games. Union have been playing badly for months. And actually, after they conceded the second goal against Wolfsburg, they played very well. They would have deserved a tie at the end. They played way better than Wolfsburg. But that's why Baumgart got sacked. And you don't fix months of bad form in 5 days of training. Yeah, Eta inherited a team 7 points above relegation playoff, which 5 games to stay up, with a squad that hadn't been winning under the previous guy for a bit. So a loss in her first match is not a surprise to Tuesday. But she's not going to get a Tuesday treatment. She's going to get first woman manager treatment, which is going to be a different treatment entirely. And here's what I mean. Her appointment got more international press than any Bundesliga hired this year. More than, Werner at Leipzig, which we talked about before. More than Company at Bayern back then. Honestly, right, like Sky Sports had a long piece on it. Al Jazeera covered it. Fox Sports had Company record about it, and I want to read you what Company said, because it's actually smart, because he always has smart things. Company said, quote, "She can serve as a role model for young girls so that they can see I can coach anywhere and have a successful career. These stories are really important." Sure, fine, agreed, obvious. But then he says something else, and this is the coach talking. He said he hopes she isn't treated exactly like male counterparts when it comes to the pressure of the job, because the pressure is not the same. And he's right. The pressure is not the same. Every result she gets for the next 5 matches is going to be read not as football outcome, but as a political one. Win, woman can coach after all. Lose, see, it was never gonna work. Draw, both take simultaneously from different people. I just wait for Doppelpass, the German football talk show Sunday morning with Stefan Effenberger. They probably invite Mario Basler again, right? So that's structurally unfair. It's unfair to put such a load on anyone. And also, the load that comes with being first. Nobody said it would be fair. Nobody said it was easy. Eta herself has said she wants to be judged on her coaching. She's going to be judged on a lot of other things first, though. So from a coach's eye perspective, here's what I actually want to flag. She inherited a squad in crisis with 5 games to save the season, with no preseason, no transfer window, and with the additional weight of being the first ever. If she keeps Union up, it'll be not a miracle, it'll be okay. If she doesn't, the reasons will have very little to do with her and almost everything to do with the squad she walked into. The failure mode I'm worried about is Union go into relegation. The media frames it as Eta couldn't save them. And then the next female coach appointment anywhere in the top 5 leagues gets delayed another 5 years because some idiot in a boardroom uses her result as evidence. That would be profoundly stupid. Every interim manager in Europe this season is going to be judged on their specific situation, what they inherited, what they could realistically do, how the squad responded. Eta deserves the same analysis, not more, and, worth saying, not less. The fact that we're probably not going to get that analysis is the problem. And if you're listening to the show, you know enough to push back on the version you're going to hear this week, which is the actual job of what we're trying to do here with the coach's eye, to see past the story to the actual thing. All right, from the club, everyone's watching closely to the fighter. Everyone's watching for different reasons. Quick Bangkok check-in, okay, to prove we're still live from Bangkok. Rodtang, the Rodtang story finally settled. Last week on this show, we covered one championship lawsuit against Rodtang Chitmanong, the crazy superstar Muay Thai fighter. Quick recap for anyone joining us. One, the now Bangkok-based fight promotion sued Rodtang, their biggest Thai star, in different countries. 17 million US dollars, I think, in damages thought in Thailand alone. 2 weeks before Rodtang was supposed to headline their biggest event of the year in Tokyo. Rodtang's gym, Jitmanong Boxing Camp, came out midweek and said, actually, hey, the gym holds Rodtang's contractual rights, not one. Classic Muay Thai move, by the way, classic Muay Thai world 3-way tangle. Call for both sides to de-escalate. Sunday, both sides did. Press conference held at Jitmanong Gym. One withdraws all civil and criminal cases in all countries. All previous oral and written agreements between the two sides are cancelled. Rodtang's fight against Takeru goes ahead as a free agent arrangement. The fine print here is where it gets real. Rodtang has to apologize for his earlier social media posts. He can't pursue further legal action over the 2022 contract on the forged signature issue that they had, and he can't make more posts that damage the promotion. One gets to keep the fight on its biggest card of the year with its biggest star. Both sides here gave up a lot, and that's actually the interesting part. From a coach's point of view, two organizations escalated a dispute publicly to the point of legal action across different jurisdictions. 2 weeks before the event that both of them needed to succeed. Both of them looked in the mirror and they realized the escalation was worse than the problem. So they climbed down messily, publicly, expensively, but they climbed down. That's mature, ugly, but mature. The willingness to eat some public embarrassment in exchange for not nuking something that matters to both of you is real skill. Most organizations do not have that. And because this is what this show is going to do until I get tired of doing it, compared it to how Real Madrid handled their dispute last week. You knew it was coming. Players had bad results, president came down to shame them, manager wasn't in the room. Now climb down, no dialogue, just a louder voice talking over a quieter one. And I can't believe I'm using one as a good example because usually I don't, and you will hear this on this podcast as well. But yeah, Same week, two stakeholder disputes, one settled, one festering. One organization will be healthier next Monday, at least a little bit, than it was last Monday. One will not. So the fight still happens. Rodtang walks out of it, win or lose, as a free agent for the first time in his career. Whoever signs him next is going to have to prove they're better at handling their talent than one was. Which, if you listen to other Formula One talent, should not be that hard. But more about this probably in future episodes. So let's see how this plays out. I still can't imagine Rodtang fighting somewhere outside of Thailand. I mean, we have RWS here, Rajadamnern series, also Muay Thai organization. But other than that, tough. But he always wanted to try MMA, so maybe that's his chance now to try. He trained a little bit, I believe, with Mighty Mouse when he was here. So let's see. But hey, one more thing before we wrap. I watched WrestleMania just before I started recording this podcast. Both nights. I'm going to be honest with you about it, because that's what I do here. So, quick positioning for anyone who hasn't watched pro wrestling in 10 years. WrestleMania, you know that probably, is the Super Bowl of WWE. 2 nights, yes, by now it's 2 nights if you haven't noticed. Massive production and the year's biggest storylines pay off, usually. This year, John Cena, you could see him because he was the host, which was weird. John Cena in a suit, not in shorts. And across 2 nights, we got a pretty good ladder match, some grandiose entrances that went on longer than the matches following them, and a main event in night 2, Roman Reigns versus CM Punk. That was actually a genuinely good match, and I want to give it that. 2 guys who can work a crowd, a rivalry that's been built probably at least 20 minutes of, I don't even know how long, but it was legit good professional wrestling. Yeah, credit where credit is due. But here's the thing I want to say about WrestleMania 42 as a whole, because it connects directly to what we spent 10 minutes on early in this episode. One thing, and we know it already, Roman Reigns is the new John Cena. And I mean it in the most specific possible way. Cena was the face of WWE for 15 years because the company's business model demanded a reliable, marketable, protected top guy. Someone who'd show up, sell merch, headline the big shows, and not go off script. Cena did that job. He did it so well that for about a decade, every WrestleMania main event was either Cena wins, LOL, or Cena loses, but you suspect he's still the point of the show. Then Cena aged out, and WWE, now run by Triple H instead of Vince McMahon, by the way, did not rebuild the structure. They just found a new guy to play the same role, the tribal chief, Roman Reigns. Different performer, identical job description. Show up, sell tickets, headline the big shows, be the gravitational center of the product. Now this is where the coach's eye part lands. Yeah, Vince McMahon left WWE, I don't know, 2 years now ago, and everybody wanted him out. Those allegations, all those things, but also because he was lame. And the consensus was, we want Triple H running things because Triple H gets wrestling. Triple H respects the performers. Triple H is going to make this a smarter product. And Triple H has, in fairness, done some of that at the margins. Better booking in the mid-card, more interesting women's storylines, better use of NXT talent. But WrestleMania 42 was almost booked like Vince never left. And I mean that as a description, not a metaphor. Going into WrestleMania, fans were making jokes on that Vince must have snuck back into the writer's room. Storylines were lame, build was flat, host was awkward, and the main event, despite being a great match, is Roman Reigns, the Cena replacement, headlining against CM Punk. In exactly the shape of a main event that Vince McMahon would have booked in, I don't know, 2012? Which is the same question, bringing it together, we asked about Leipzig earlier, but from the opposite direction. Is the result coming from the person running the show or from the structure around them? In Leipzig, the football operation is excellent because the structure is sound. The person in charge, Werner, or before Marco Rose, or before half dozen others, matters less than the machine they're running. WWE, the product is mediocre because the structure is unchanged. The person in charge, Triple H instead of Vince, matters less than the commercial imperative that that he's inherited. The balance sheet still demands a Reigns to play the Cena role. The production budget still demands grandiose entrances over storytelling. The event format still demands 12 matches across 2 nights because that's what the pay-per-view, whatever you call it by now, model pays for. Triple H can be a better creative than Vince McMahon and still produce the same WrestleMania because it isn't Vince who books the shows, it's the structure around WrestleMania that books these shows. This is the thing about replacing leadership in any organization, whether it's a wrestling company, a football club, or anything else. If you only change the face and not the architecture, you get the same outputs with a different signature on the bottom. And the fans notice. Eventually. They're noticing now. If you watched WrestleMania this weekend and felt like you'd seen it before, because it's also in the same city as last year, you have. Roman Reigns is the new Cena. We've known that for years now. WrestleMania 42 is the old WrestleMania in slightly different colors. Again, even the same city this time. And until the commercial structure actually changes, Triple H can take all the bows he wants and the product is going to keep rhyming with itself. Which, on a coach's eye show, is the kind of observation I was always going to make. So sorry if you thought this was going to be a wrestling episode. So, quick summary. Bayern 35. Leipzig is better than you want it to be. Eta inherits a crisis and deserves a fair read. Rodtang is a free agent after his fight with Takeru, and WrestleMania is exactly what it's always been. We live in very consistent times, which might actually be a good thing, judging from all the politics around us. Next episode is going to be a big one. We have a night in Paris. Bayern play PSG in the Champions League semifinals. Arsenal gonna play Atletico in the Champions League. We will also talk about that once it happens, of course. We will also then, of course, talk about what else happens in the Bundesliga and check if Rodtang actually sticks to not posting about one championship or if there will be more drama to be had. Should be fun. If this was worth your time, subscribe wherever you're listening. If it wasn't, also subscribe. The numbers help either way. Gotta be honest with you. If this was a lot worse than the pilot, tell me. I'll take that as data and show how we can improve it so that the show actually gets better next time you're listening. That's Tactic. Back next time. Thank you for listening.